They said the cornfield behind old Miller's farm was cursed. Everyone in Hollow Creek had a story. Kids who vanished. Dogs that went in and never came back. And of course, the whispers, always the whispers, of the man in the cornfield. I didn't believe it. At least, not until the night we dared each other to go in. It was late summer, the air thick with heat and the sound of cicadas. Me, Darren, and Lex took flashlights and beers, climbing the fence behind the grain silo. We were 17, bored, and too stupid to care about the warnings. The cornfield looked endless, rows upon rows of tall stalks stretching into blackness. We didn't go far, just enough to prove we weren't scared. We laughed, drank, and took turns telling ghost stories, pretending not to jump at every rustle. Then Lex went quiet. He turned his flashlight toward the corn behind us. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. We all froze. There was something in the stalks, a faint rustling, not wind, steady, purposeful, closer. Then a low voice drifted through the field, almost too soft to catch. "Whose name will I wear tonight?" The flashlight in my hand shook. Darren laughed nervously. "Nice try, man. Not falling for it." But Lex was backing up, pale as a sheet. "That wasn't me." Another rustle, closer now. Then I saw it, just for a second. Between the rows, a figure, tall, thin, dressed in tattered overalls. His head was tilted, and his face was wrong. Not deformed, not covered, just blank. No eyes, no mouth, just skin. And yet, the voice came again, clearer this time. "Whose name will I wear tonight?" We ran, crashing through cornstalks, gasping, pushing each other, desperate to find the edge of the field. We didn't stop until we hit the fence and tumbled into the dirt on the other side. Lex was sobbing. Darren was bleeding from a cut on his cheek. But we didn't look back. We never spoke of it again. But that night, when I finally got home, I found something slipped under my bedroom door. A piece of corn husk, with my name carved into it. I stared at the corn husk in my hand for a long time. My name was carved into it, not written, not burned. Carved, thin, sharp cuts etched with impossible precision. It shouldn't have been there. No one had come into my house. No one knew where I lived except Darren and Lex, and even they wouldn't sneak in just to pull a prank. Not after what we saw. I threw the husk in the trash and tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. That blank face, that voice whispering through rows of corn. "Whose name will I wear tonight?" The next morning, I got a call from Darren. He didn't say hello. Just, "Lex is gone." I sat up in bed, my blood turning to ice. "What do you mean?" "He never came home," Darren said. "His mom's freaking out. Cops were here. They think he ran away." But he didn't run. We both knew that. That night I went to Darren's house. We sat in his garage, doors locked, a baseball bat between us. Neither of us wanted to say it out loud, but we both knew the truth. Something took Lex. Something from the field. Then Darren reached into his hoodie pocket. He pulled out a corn husk, pale, dried, and on it his name. I couldn't speak, just nodded slowly. We made a pact right then. We'd go back to the field. Burn the damn thing down if we had to. Whatever that thing was, we couldn't let it keep taking people. We chose Saturday night. That gave us 4 days. And every night, I found a new husk under my door. Each one with my name. But the last one was different. It didn't just have my name. It had a second line carved underneath it. "You were always my favorite." Saturday couldn't come fast enough. I barely slept, jumping at every creak, every whisper of wind through the trees outside my window. The corn husk kept coming, tucked into my locker at school, wedged under my car's windshield wiper, even slipped into my backpack. Always with my name, always carved. The worst was Friday morning, or I opened my notebook in class and found a husk inside. But it wasn't my name this time. It was Lex's, and it was still wet. Darren and I met behind the old diner that night. He brought a backpack stuffed with lighters, a crowbar, and 2 bottles of gasoline. "You really think fire will work?" I asked. He looked me in the eye. "It has to." We crossed the field's fence just after midnight. The sky was overcast, no moonlight. Our flashlights created long, nervous shadows across the rows of corn. The stalks were taller now, thicker, like they'd grown faster than normal. Too fast. We moved deeper in, following a faint trail, broken stalks, trampled leaves. Darren found a shoe, Lex's shoe. Then we heard it again, that voice, soft, crooning. "New names for the skin I wear." We froze. Somewhere ahead of us, corn rustled in a slow, spiraling circle. A shape moved just out of reach of the flashlight beams. Tall, twitching, like it couldn't quite remember how to walk. Darren threw the gas, lit a match. Flames whooshed up the dry stalks, bright and angry. Smoke churned into the sky. Then the screaming started. Not ours, his. A horrible, hollow wail that echoed in our skulls. It wasn't pain. It wasn't fear. It was rage. Corn stalks ahead of us melted, curling away from something tall and burning in the center of the inferno. Oh, he didn't run. He turned to look at us, his blank face blistering, blackening. And then, for the first time, he smiled. Skin split. And beneath it were names, ours. I've seen things I'll never unsee. The fire caught fast, but not fast enough. The corn burned like dry paper, but it stood in the middle of it, like the flames couldn't reach him. Like he'd lived in fire long before we brought it to him. That grin, it wasn't human. It split wider and wider as the skin peeled away, revealing layers beneath that weren't muscle or bone. They were names, hundreds. Some written in ink, some carved like tree bark, some stitched in with black thread into the folds of flesh. And they moved. They squirmed. He was wearing them, names, as if they were alive. Darren screamed and ran. I should have followed, but I couldn't move. My flashlight flickered, and in that moment of dark, I heard my name whispered again. Closer. You belong to me now. I turned and bolted. Somehow I made it back to the fence, smoke choking my lungs. I didn't stop until I was back on the main road, covered in ash, coughing and sobbing. But Darren didn't make it out. The police found the field the next morning, blackened and smoldering. They blamed it on lightning, said it was an accident. There was no body, no Darren, just a single row of untouched corn still standing, green and perfect amid the ashes, and hanging from one stalk, a husk, with my name and Darren's, written side by side. I didn't go to Darren's vigil. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that row of untouched corn, that husk hanging like a trophy. My name beside his, like we were already claimed, marked. My parents thought I was traumatized. They were half right. I stopped going to school, barely spoke. I stayed in my room with the lights on and my window locked, even during the day. But the husk kept coming. This time they didn't have names. They had dates, all different, all in the near future. And then something changed. The night before the first date on the husks, I found my bedroom door open. I knew I had locked it. I stepped inside slowly, holding my breath. Everything looked normal, except for the mirror. It was fogged up, and someone had written on it, in a finger dragged through the mist. He wears what you leave behind. I wiped it clean, heart pounding, but no one was there. The next morning, I got a text from Lex's number. He was dead, gone. I saw it, but the message was clear. Did you forget me already? My hands shook. I stared at the phone. Then another text came through. Just one word. Run. I dropped the phone. Outside my window, something moved in the trees. Tall, thin, watching. His face had changed again. It wore Darren's mouth now, and it was smiling. I ran. No shoes, no coat, just out the back door and into the night. The street was empty, silent except for the wind through the trees. But it wasn't normal wind. It whistled, like someone breathing just behind my ears. I made it to Mrs. Kinley's house 3 blocks down. She's the oldest person in town, barely leaves her porch, but she always kept a lantern burning at night. She opened the door before I knocked. "You've seen him," she said. I nodded, breathless. She didn't ask me to explain. She just let me in, closed the door, and locked it with 3 separate bolts. She poured tea with hands that trembled. Her eyes were wet and distant. They used to call him the Nameless. But that was wrong, she whispered. He has names. He steals them. She pulled out a shoebox from under her table. Inside were dozens of old corn husks, brittle with age, faded ink, names scratched in. Some I recognized from town history. Others I didn't. "He's been here a long time," she said, feeding on remembrance, wearing what we forget. The people who vanish? He doesn't just take them, he takes their place, and we forget they ever existed. I shook my head. But I remember Darren. I remember Lex. "You won't," she said, "unless you fight it. That's why I collect the husks, so I don't forget." A sudden bang on the porch made us both freeze. The lantern flickered. Mrs. Kinley stood slowly, trembling. She looked at me with eyes full of ancient fear. "If he's chosen you," she said, "then you have one chance." "What?" "Before midnight. Go to where it began and leave him something you love, something tied to your name. Or you'll be next." Outside, a shadow moved across the window. And this time I heard it say my name. The road back to the field felt longer than I remembered. I stole my dad's truck, clutching the wheel with white knuckles. In the passenger seat sat my childhood journal, pages full of my handwriting, dreams, secrets. It had my full name on the first page, scribbled in blocky letters from 2nd grade. It was the only thing I could think of that held me. The wind picked up as I neared the edge of the old cornfield. The charred remains still visible, even after weeks. But the untouched row, the one that never burned, stood as tall as ever. Green, thriving, and humming. The stalks shifted as if breathing, and I felt a pressure in my head, like something was trying to push me out of myself. Like my memories were bleeding from my skull. I stepped into the row, clutching the journal tight. "Take it," I whispered. "Take this instead." A hush fell. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then the journal vanished from my hands. Snatched by the wind, or something worse. The corn parted ahead of me, and he stepped forward, wearing Darren's face, Lex's eyes, even a scar that used to be mine, on the brow just above the left eye. But he didn't move. He just looked at me. Then he opened his mouth, and I heard my own voice say, "Thank you." I turned and ran, faster than I ever had in my life. Behind me, the corn hissed, curling, writhing. The air cracked like lightning. I made it back to the road just as the first light of dawn touched the sky. And in that moment, I remembered everything. Lex, Darren, the fire, the husks. They were real. But when I got home, my parents didn't remember them. Not even their names. I tore through my room looking for any trace of the journal. Nothing. Not under my bed. Not in my drawer. Not in the old toy chest I hadn't opened since I was 10. Gone. But I still remembered. The fog that had started to settle over Darren and Lex in my mind had lifted. I could see their faces clearly now, their laughter, even the way Darren used to chew the cap of his pen. And I knew that wasn't normal. He didn't want me to remember. That journal was supposed to be an offering, a sacrifice. But instead of losing myself, I found more of me, which meant I had broken something. That night, the dreams started. Not nightmares. Worse, memories that weren't mine. Running barefoot through burning cornfields. Watching families forget the faces of their own children. Seeing myself, or someone like me, standing in a mirror, smiling with teeth that didn't belong. I'd wake up gasping, clutching my throat, whispering names I didn't recognize. One night I opened my closet and found something that stopped my heart. A single corn husk resting gently atop my shoes. No name, no date. Just a small, handwritten phrase burned into the leaves. Remember too much and he'll wear you sooner. I didn't sleep after that. Instead, I started writing everything down. Every face, every detail, every whisper. Because if no one else remembered, I would. And I'd find a way to end him, even if it meant losing myself in the process. I found an old map of our town in the library's basement, forgotten, yellowed, brittle at the edges. It had names, whole families I'd never heard of, labeled on streets that didn't exist anymore. I compared it to the current layout. Most of those homes were now just empty fields. One of them, the cornfield. It used to be a neighborhood. Rows of houses, children, lives, erased. The next day I went back to Mrs. Kinley, journal in hand, and told her everything. She stared at me like she was seeing a ghost. "You brought part of yourself back," she whispered. "That's why you still remember." I nodded. "But how do I make others remember?" She hesitated, then went to a small trunk near her fireplace. Inside were more husks, but these weren't brittle. They were fresh, green, and each had a single name carved in it. "These are the ones I saved," she said. "People everyone else forgot. I wrote their names down before they vanished from my mind too. But they're not really gone. Not entirely." She handed me a husk. Lex's name. "Write their names again," she said. "Say them out loud. Share their stories. That's how you steal them back from him." As I held the husk, something changed. A memory sparked. A vivid flash of Lex riding his bike, laughing, chasing Darren down the hill. And it felt real, warm, alive. It was working. But then the house went cold. Outside, the wind howled, and the trees bent in unnatural angles. Mrs. Kinley's breath fogged the air. She looked at me, her face pale. "He knows." The front door creaked open, though no one touched it. And from the cornfield, carried on the wind, came a voice made of 1,000 stolen tones. "If you remember them, I'll remember you." That night, armed with the husks and the names I had written down, I returned to the field. The moon was a silver sliver, barely lighting the way, but I had a purpose now. I called out their names. Darren, Lex, the families from the map, even strangers whose stories Mrs. Kinley had shared. The corn rustled. A shadow emerged, tall and twisted, face shifting with every name I spoke. But I didn't stop. I kept calling. The air thickened, charged with static and whispers. He reached for me, fingers like dry branches, cold and sharp. But I held up the husks, each one glowing faintly in the dark. The shadow recoiled, howling in rage and pain. Light burst from the husks, a blinding blaze that swallowed the field. When the fire died down, the corn was gone. The houses from the old map reappeared, ghostly but real. And so did the faces, smiling, waving. I felt a hand on my shoulder. Warm. Human. I turned. Darren smiled, alive again. Lex laughed. Mrs. Kinley nodded. "We remember," she said. "And now so will everyone else." I left the field that night with a heart full of hope, because sometimes the scariest legends have a way of being rewritten.